ABSL Summit. Transform to thrive.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I know that it's very hard to be in front of you here last, but it sounds good that it's closing debate. So thank you very much that you are not focusing on going to the Kraków Główny and Warsaw and Lublin and Poznań and Wrocław again, and you are sitting and will be listening to us. But feel invited to welcome very, very warm Grażyna Piotrowska-Oliwa, independent non-executive director in board of directors at Pepco Group. Paul Raddon, general manager and head of global service centers at HSBC. Professor Leszek Balcerowicz, economist, former president of the National Bank of Poland, minister of finance in the first non-communist government in Poland. Sounds like standing ovation. Give us a time, please. Okay. Pete Phillips, Global Security Operations Director at Amazon. And Ryszard Petru, member of the Polish Parliament, founder of political party Nowoczesna years ago. The only girl here, Grażyna Piotrowska-Oliwa. Grażyna, fall, stand up, move on, the price of success. Success, how much?
Actually, it's a very interesting question, because for every single one of us, anyone would have a completely different definition. Why the definition of success is so difficult? First, somebody may assume that success is lots of money, being a manager, growing the company, but only for money. It's okay. So this is one definition. Second is actually see the company growing, see the results and having the fun of that. And the more fun you have, the more success you have. Third is all the personal stuff that we are perfectly aware of. It's family, it's everything. Why I speak about actually the success is that without the success in the third domain, which is our private domain, it's very difficult to have success in the first two. Have I answered your question?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you very much, but it's hard to hear everything on the stage. But Mr. Professor, you said on the backstage that without monologue, there is no dialogue. Thank you very much for that. I understand. But I will try. Your definition of failure is?
Lack of ambition.
Mm-hmm. Lack of ambition.
Yeah. Then failure.
Just like that, okay. So, Pete, you spent years in US Army. It was 30 years, yeah, in general?
30 years, Army and the Marines.
Yeah. Now when we are looking globally at the world, we are at war. Is it success of the world or is it failure for us?
It's both success and failure. And I think war, conflict is the result of failure on the part of leadership. But from that failure does oftentimes come the success that we've seen.
Yeah. Paul, do you want to add something to the same question?
Not having any military experience whatsoever,
Yeah.
I am totally unqualified to comment. And on the basis I'm sitting next to an ex-Marine, I'm a little afraid he might turn around and hit me if I do say something. I'd only have to agree with Pete, to be honest. It's got to be both qualified success and failure. And is it success and failure of military, or is it success or failure of policy? And I think that's what drives the ultimate answer to your question. Which aspect are we actually looking at? What type of leader has got us into the position where conflict resulted in the first place?
Yeah, looking at the businesses, especially businesses like yours, we are at war too, but in different meaning?
I wouldn't say we're at war. I'm in a room full of friends, not a room full of enemies. But yeah, we all regularly talk about the war for talent, or the war for survival, the resilience that we all need to have. So it's conflict. I wouldn't say war, but yes, and your level of preparation, I think, is what ultimately leads you to success or failure.
Okay, so Pete, how to be ready for that kind of moment for businesses globally?
How to be ready? be willing to fail. I can tell you that throughout my career, I've failed many times. As we were talking before we came on the stage, I had 4 jobs in 4 years. And I kept putting myself out there and putting myself out there, ultimately landing where I am today.
You decide to quit, or they decided to quit you?
A combination of both, actually. The first one was I was a casualty of politics. The second one was downsizing due to the COVID environment. The third job I left for a better opportunity because of the experience that I had. The company was actually watching my career, and they saw the multiple opportunities that I had taken on and found that that was actually a sign of success and a willingness to put myself out there and be vulnerable.
You said be ready for fail. In which way we should be ready?
Say that again?
You said be ready for fail. So in which way we should be ready for it?
That's ready for fail. For me, again, I have high expectations. And so maintaining that high bar, and sometimes you just don't make that high bar. And you talk to professional athletes, and they will talk about that. Talk to CEOs, and they will tell you about their experiences and the high bar, and sometimes you just don't make it. So to me, that is, a sign of strength. I wouldn't really call it failure. Some people say it's failure. So in the truest sense, I guess it is. But to me, it's really an accomplishment. Being able to set your sights high, set your goals high, and strive to make those goals, realizing that every time you won't be successful.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's about being prepared to pick yourself up and carry on. I mean, we all love to quote leaders. Michael Jordan, I failed, and that's the reason I succeed. It's that repeated ability to learn and adapt, and that's that's the price of being able to succeed.
Yep. So, Mr. Professor, when I give you the same question, when you are looking at your career and your future, in which way you are ready for failures?
Well, let me first mention that possibility of failure is related to taking a risk. But if you take a risk, you are having a very boring activity, which is a nonsense. So in my public life, for the first time when I was in charge of Poland's stabilization economic reform, there was a lot of risks because there was a hopeless situation, 500% inflation and falling huge foreign debt. But I knew that without radical, some people say, drastic reforms, we are going to fail. So sometimes risky activities are much better as far as the results are concerned than non-risky activities. And not everybody can assess options which are contained in a given situation.
Okay, Ryszard, fall, stand up, move on. Which is your favorite?
Would you be so kind to repeat the question again?
Yeah, as I said, it's very hard to listening to each other on the stage. So, yeah, I will do my best. Fall, stand up, move on. Which part of that road is the most important for you? Fall, stand up, or move on?
First we have to define, what is the success? I would say by success, you achieving the goal, right? So you have a path, and sometimes you have failures on the way to achieve your success, right? But I perceive I'm not sure whether I answer your question, but let me say what I want to say.
Yeah, typical politician guy. Thank you for that. We have a problem, I don't understand, but I will tell you something.
I can always say that I couldn't hear your question, so that's why I'm giving my answer. But let's say I perceive the failure as a lesson. So you have to find out what happened, what was wrong, what kind of conclusions you make out of it, right? And how not to make it once again. So I think this is the crucial thing. But I fully agree with Professor Balcerowicz. If you don't take a risk, you do not achieve anything, right? So no risk, no fun.
So taking a risk in business is different than taking a risk at the political stage, for example?
To some extent, it's similar because in politics you can take the risk or not. You can be passive there. At the end of the day, you fail, right? But I would say in business it's easier because you have plenty of clients or business partners. In politics, you have always the same, the same partners. So I think to some extent it's more difficult, and the final result is until you get a new election. So it takes 4 years to achieve the goals, right?
Or 5.
In business, it's more you achieve the, let's say, results quite more often, right? So I think this is the big difference. But anyway, if you want to achieve something, you have to take a risk, and on the way you fail, of course, there should be more successes than failures. Otherwise, you don't achieve your goal.
Yeah, Mr. Professor, I saw that you planned to add something to that. Do you see some differences?
I think we are speaking about two kinds of situation, either competition or no competition. In politics, no competition means dictatorship. It's always better to have competition than dictatorship. In business, competition means that you can fail, but the country as a whole, without competition, loses.
Yep.
And the second point I would like to make, I think that competition in business leaves less room for demagogy and cheating compared to the competition in democratic politics. And this is why media, professional media and professional NGOs are very important to curb the influence of demagogy and populism.
Yeah. So, Grażyna, when you are maybe focusing on the same question or seeing some differences or not seeing some differences between business and politics from the failure perspective.
It's absolutely huge. Have you ever, I would ask the audience or the colleagues, have you ever seen a politician paying out of the pocket money for their failures, for the decisions that they are fully accountable of? Have you? Thanks. And please do not mention Trump and everything that he has. The guys from US would elaborate much more on that one. So this is first. They pretend to be accountable. Sorry, nothing personal, gents. But the truth is that we pay, as taxpayers, we pay for their mistakes. In terms of management, in terms of all the businesses, either our company will go bankrupt, either we get broke, we suffer, our pockets suffer, our families suffer, our friends suffer because we cannot invite them for dinner. By the way...
and our businesses suffered too sometimes.
Yeah, everything. So, and we know that it costs us. Wrong decision, taking decision is always based on something. It's the gut feeling, it's the analysis, it's something. The world changed. This is what actually, backstage discussions are always the best, but some of them cannot be transferred to the stage. But what we discussed, that actually gut feeling, the decisions, now with our world that has completely changed, this is what Pete mentioned, last 4 years, it's a completely different world. We live in a world of change, constant change, so the management of change, for politicians, it's difficult as well, but this is the basic. If I may just, to sum up and to add something on the definition of access, and sorry, the gentleman and the male part of the audience, but I think that ladies, the women, the managers will love it. Definition of success, it's my personal, not only as manager, but also a female point of view, is that I'm the only one here in this panel, the closing panel, and the only female. Thank you. And by the way, this is not the first time. It's been many like this because the world does not change. Thanks.
Yeah. But I was asking about the differences between... sorry for that. Yeah, I'm taking it.
I'm trying to
personally.
wake up the audience. They had they had their lunch, and so.
Yeah, I agree. So I was asking about the differences between politics and business on the context of failure. But may I ask you, Paul, about the differences between personal failure and failure as a company, for example?
From my personal perspective?
Yep. But I know who you are.
I know you know who I am, and I'm also thinking of the conversations we had backstage, so I'm trying to phrase the answer in a palatable way that's not going to get me into trouble. I've worked for HSBC for 38 years.
Yeah.
So since the dinosaurs were roaming.
You know everything.
I wouldn't say I know everything. I like to think I know everything.
Yeah.
So I now find it very difficult to separate personal success from company success because I am so invested in my job. I think some of our newer colleagues, Gen Z, they have a completely different perspective. What's more valuable to them and what they view as personal success and or failure is very different from what I do.
Yeah.
So where I suffer is being able to adapt to what they need because I've been around for so long.
May I ask you about the differences between their meanings and your meanings about failure, Gen Z and yours?
I'm glad you said failure because you'd have gone down any other route. It would have been grey hair and so many other things.
Yeah.
So Gen Z, I think, are more invested in the today and what my success means for me today.
Yeah.
But the me, I think, is the important difference between my generation and Gen Z. For Gen Z, me is a much wider expanse. It's community. When I was growing up, when I started to work, I grew up in the world of Margaret Thatcher in London in the 80s. And it was all about me. Not me personally, but that was the tone of the day. It was your personal success. It was for you to thrive, for you to achieve, for you to have and be seen to be successful. Now I think Gen Z are more invested in community, and it's about the we succeeding rather than the me succeeding.
Yeah. So for them, 30 years at the same company will be the success or not? What do you think?
I like to think I'd encourage them to stay in one place for 30 years. I don't think many of them will, but I think it will show a different strength from a Gen Zer to remain in a company for as long as I have. I mean, I'm sitting next to my Gen Zer here who's taken 4 jobs in the last 4 years. So he can obviously...
And he's so happy about that.
We're the same age.
Yeah, Pete, do you remember your biggest mistake when you spent years in the army?
So
Only one.
Just one.
Not one where war resulted.
The biggest mistake was telling my boss that I didn't want to move to Washington, D.C.
Why?
At the time, I thought I wanted to continue flying. And we had a heated discussion. He said, these are orders, not suggestions.
Yeah.
But
a little bit different in the businesses, yeah.
But had I not, had I been persistent and not moved to Washington, D.C., I would have missed a tremendous opportunity. And the opportunity was to work on what I consider probably one of the most pivotal legislative acts to impact the United States. And I worked for a congressman who introduced the legislation to create the Department of Homeland Security. And he did so before 9/11. Had I been persistent and not gone to D.C., the mistake was telling my boss I didn't want to go, but the reality is he knew it was best for me at that time. And had I not, I would have missed out on a tremendous opportunity to actually shape what Homeland Security looks like in the United States.
Paul?
And as a leader, did he recognize something in you, or was it just an order?
He recognized something in me that I didn't recognize in myself.
It wasn't a facetious question.
No,
I was
I
genuinely
understand,
interested.
exactly. Yeah, it goes back to our leaders born or made. And I had this innate ability to lead. I didn't recognize that in myself, and he was using this as a mechanism to further my career.
Okay. Grażyna, in which way, maybe you can describe your own style, communicate failures to the teams?
I would definitely not use sometimes. It really depends on the situation.
Thank you for that. Typical politician answer.
Yeah, a manager and a leader has to be to some kind to some extent a politician
Diplomat.
as well, and a diplomat. So it depends on the situation. If they really did something bad, then the screwdriver, you know what I mean, the S word, you screwed. Excuse my French, you screwed up totally, and really blunt communication works the best. If you start to be too much diplomatic, it means that the trouble is not that really that big, and that you woke up and you have a bad day, which is a very bad thing. So really simple communication, because for me, what is important is that I can compare it to the army to some extent. If there is an order, you have to execute it, you do it. I mean, an idea that the company follows, a product that has to be developed.
Strategy.
And then a strategy that is followed. And then there is a roadblock, there is a bottleneck or whatever. And you start to say that, well, maybe it's a bad day, maybe it's raining, maybe the strategy will go to the left or maybe we'll change it. It will not work. People, your team will not understand it. So the communication has to be very precise, very clean-cut, and addressed to the people that actually failed, giving them the second chance. I believe in second chance anyway. But they have to understand what happened, what is wrong, and what can we do, and work on that. Any kind of political, again, excuse my French, bullshit does not work in business. But this is my humble opinion.
Yeah, thank you very much. So being honest. Ryszard?
Yeah, I want to pick up this question because I like the one, and I'm not sure what is your next question going to be.
Yeah.
So,
And if it will be. We have 18 minutes.
But I think there is no difference whether you communicate internally, externally. If you have a failure, you always should have a solution. What we do next,
Yep.
right? I think this is the crucial. So you have the answer. So what? So what lesson we learned? What we want to achieve?
But
if you only concentrate on the failure,
And what was happened, yeah?
mostly about the future. I would
Okay.
say what was wrong, what we made wrong, and what are the conclusions out of it, and what we're going to achieve in the future. So strategy, solution. I think this is the key. If you too much concentrate on the failure, you do not move forward, right? And I do not see any difference between. Of course, you have to be blunt. But you always should have an answer. What you're gonna do better for the next time. So I think this is the crucial. And whatever, whether you internally communicate or externally, I'm saying because you always sometimes also make mistakes or failures in politics, right? And you have to communicate to the public what was wrong, what are the conclusions, and what we're going to achieve in the future. And I think it pays.
Okay. So, Mr. Professor, in which way you are communicating your failures, if there is something?
Sure, but I would not share with you.
We have time.
No. But let me refer to my professional experience. And first, when you have a very challenging situation like in Poland, in the end of '89, the key is a very good team. And I have been lucky to be able to pick up a very good team. Then, strategy. And it should be clear that a strategy is risky in the sense that it cannot achieve all the predicted results, but the alternative would have been much worse. And it helps if you have this perspective of strategy, because even if you do not achieve fully what you wanted to achieve pursuing a given strategy, you will be able to say, well, look, if we, for example, delay necessary change, privatization or stabilization, the situation would have been much worse. So not only pure motivation, pure emotions, but also very well thought, educated comparisons are very important in communicating the reasons for the failure. And the failure in the implementation of a given strategy does not need to be a failure of the whole strategy. Because the alternative strategy, as I said, could have been much worse.
So when we made a mistake, the crucial thing is how to communicate this to ourselves and to our teams, yeah, Grażyna?
Definitely, because sometimes, and I think it's common for politicians and managers, sometimes it's very difficult really to identify the reason behind the failure. Because for me, it's one thing. Now you know that there is a fuck up. Sorry.
Once again?
Then, famous F word, yeah, very commonly used in business. I think that everybody, in politics as well.
Yeah, I know that they don't like bullshit, yeah.
Yeah, so once you know that there is always a reason behind the failure, but there can be many reasons, and without this identification of what went wrong, you are not able to move on. So you have to know first, okay, there is a problem. Houston, we have a problem, but well, I would say underlying reason behind this problem has to be identified. And then I strongly believe in teamwork. So it's not like, okay, now I will tell you, the boss, I will tell you what to do, I will command you what to do, because this can be another failure. Yeah, there is a high probability that you know what is the best in the situation, you can suggest, but it's always good to ask. There is no stupid questions, and there can be so many great answers in the team, within the group of people you are working with. But then the issue is if you are bold enough to ask the question to your team, to the people that report to you. And this is something that is still kind of rare. Because we really want to be the only one and the only one that know everyone, everybody, everything. So never happens.
So my dream is...
Apart from Professor Balcerowicz, of course, he knows everything.
Yeah, do you remember your personal moment that you stand in front of your team and said, I screwed up?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Actually...
The last one.
The last time, yeah, because I forgot about something. I was in a rush. This is something that is so popular in our times, that we are on the rush always. We are on with 2 phones, computers, iPads and everything. And sometimes, yeah, I made a mistake because it was a small one. But I had to say, guys, I'm so sorry, but I did not send a bloody mail because it was this, and that started, actually it was like it was the beginning of the domino effect. Yeah? So, yeah, what is also important, it's always good to, when you know that there is a failure, not to try to cover it, not to try to ignore it, because then there is the domino effect. So being bold to admit, oh God, yeah, there is a failure, something that I was the reason behind it, but this one was easy to solve. Yep. But to admit that, yeah, we know that there is a failure, and don't wait for it to die or just to disappear, because in 99% it does not disappear.
Yep. So Paul, in which way you personally, or as a leader in a such kind of huge business, communicate mistakes?
I think you've got to do it openly and you've got to do it transparently. And I don't think people believe you unless you are open and transparent. I think I agree with the point as well that you're not an individual, you're part of a team. And my mother taught me a problem shared is a problem halved. And she normally taught me that before she hit me on the back of the head with a stick or something. Not that I condone violence of any sort whatsoever. But you do have to include other people to be able to survive, to be able to replicate and continue on the journey. There is a need for resilience, there is a need for redundancy, absolutely, but open and honest communication is the best way to keep the team on the journey, to the point the professor made about strategy. It's got to be a continuous dialogue.
Is it easy now to be honest with people, with the teams, with leaders?
I think it's much easier. Much easier than when I started in the organization. Because when I started, I think it was more command and control. Thou shalt do. Okay. And if you're going to up, then you're in trouble for doing so. Yep. I think nowadays, because our colleagues are more expectant of open communication, to communicate with them openly because it's expected, you're actually found out to be a fraud if you're not doing that. And that creates you a further problem. So I think it's much easier to communicate now.
So do you agree that sometimes, or maybe always, fail is to win?
Absolutely. I actually think you've got to fail to be able to succeed. I genuinely believe that. But, and there's always a but.
I was waiting for that but.
Always. It's got to be a but.
It's 11 minutes for you.
Thank you. It's got to be done. It's got to be done quickly. You've got to fail fast. A drawn-out, protracted failure is death. Fail fast, recover, try again, and encouraging people to do that, I think, is a much healthier environment to operate any business. Okay, so Pete, do you agree? Fail fast?
Fail fast is definitely the way to go. Okay. And I will add, failure isn't catastrophic. To me, it's an opportunity.
Wow.
Some of the best, actually, all of the best lessons in life, for me, have been a result of a failure. I picked myself up, and I tried something else. Mm-hmm. And those are the things that I remember. I don't remember the victories. You know, those are fleeting moments. But the failures, you kind of carry those for a lifetime, and you remember those because you don't want to repeat them.
Do you remember some kind of mistakes, failures from the army time not doing in business? You knew it.
Trusting, but not verifying.
Yep.
In aviation, it will kill you.
Sometimes.
So when you trust your crew chief, but you have to verify. Your crew chief pre-flights the aircraft, but you go out and you pre-flight yourself and you verify. In business, it's the same. You assign tasks to people. You trust that they're going to get the task done, but you do need to validate what they are doing. I have been in meetings when I forgot that lesson, and I'm sitting there, and it was like I was naked because the things that were being presented were not what we should have been doing.
So what is your definition of the fail is to win? What does it mean win from your perspective?
It means that I've learned a valuable lesson. I won't repeat that again, so the next time it will be a victory. You look at, and you made reference to Michael Jordan. He talks about those failures, and he didn't like that feeling, and he trained extra hard. So to me, that is what drove him to victory, and you see that throughout life.
Ryszard, how to forget the mistake and be ready for move on? Coming back to Nowoczesna.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how to answer your question. The key thing is move on, of course. So you have to draw the lessons from the mistakes and not to repeat the same. But of course, you have to find out what is new reality, right? And adjust to new reality. So you cannot just be completely out of the new reality. And to take lessons and to find out how you, this is exactly what you said. I mean, do something different. You cannot do the same again. So it would be my answer, actually. I don't want to talk too much about it.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, I knew it. So, Grażyna, in which way you learn from your mistakes? And in which way you decide to, okay, let's go, move on?
Actually, moving on is really important. We can't get stuck in the past. Actually, it's applicable also to our personal life. We cannot leave the past because, anyway, future is much more important. So to move on, to stand up quickly and to move on is the first thing. Staying, not really being in pain, because failure is painful. It can be lethal. I love, by the way, what you said about the aviation, because actually we crash in business, but still our business may die, but we survive. So anyway, we still live on, and then we have to move on. So I fully subscribe to what was said, that all the failures actually, which doesn't kill you, makes you stronger. Nietzsche was right about it. And again, we try to ignore it. And if I hear sometimes that from the people that are considered to be very successful ones, that they have never ever had any kind of single failure, then there's a beautiful word for it. It's not only bullshit, it's just a lie. Because they are just liars, but they don't want to admit it. So, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, Mr. Professor...
Move on.
So, move on is your favorite part of that journey?
I'll pick up a different question. I think it is useful to distinguish between critical failures and non-critical. Critical failures are those who miserably fail the declared goal. For example, you inherit high inflation and you are too prudent and you do not increase interest rates sufficiently, and then you fail both personally and
take a look
also
on Turkey now.
Professionally and personally. So it's a question of what kind of risk you are ready to take. From my personal experience, I was acting when situations were challenging and risky, and I knew that I cannot avoid mistakes. So the question is, what kind of mistake you are ready to commit? And usually I was choosing a potential mistake on taking excessively risky strategy, because I compared this to a strategy of insufficient risk, which was ready to fail. And then it's very difficult, what we have very difficult to start again.
Yep. So, Paul, do you have some kind of strategy for that situations? Okay, I will take that risk, I will not take that risk.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I work for a financial institution that was founded in 1865. It based its entire survival upon risk aversion. But it's not just avoiding risk, it's welcoming the risk that helps grow the business. It's accepting that there will be risk and mitigating for it. To that point about accepting some form of failure and having the resilience and or the redundancy to be able to recover.
I think that Jeff Bezos was speaking about some situations like that, that there are two times of risk when he was asking about how to manage the team. Just say you can take that risk and because we have the return way, or that way it will be one-way ticket, so be careful. But I think that it's about the reputation, and sometimes it's hard.
Brand is all important these days.
Yeah.
And you really have to factor that into your evaluation of risk, which I would argue when I started in the organization many, many moons ago, the need to think about brand didn't come into a conversation. Mm-hmm. And leaders today have had to accept that there is a new world order, there's new aspects that are important to managing risk. Not only is it brand, it's social media. You fail, you get called out in a way that my predecessors in my role never even dreamed would happen. Yeah. So it's the adaptability and being able to incorporate new factors into that framework that you use to manage risk and or mitigate it.
So Pete, when for you is the moment that you say for yourself or maybe for your team, okay, let's go and we'll see what's next, and no, go that way?
Paul said the most important thing is mitigation. You can't live a risk-free life, but what tools can you put in place to mitigate the severity of that risk before you choose to go in that direction? We have a saying at work, one-way door decisions and two-way door decisions. And I was talking to someone last night at the party, and they were telling me that this is a one-way door decision. And I said, no, the goal would be, and it's mitigation, to turn that one-way door decision into a two-way door decision, that you go out, you can actually come back in. So to me, again, as Paul said, the key is going to be mitigation. We are, you're going to have to make a decision, and no decision is a decision, and generally it's the wrong decision. So what are you going to put in place to mitigate the risk?
Mm-hmm. So Ryszard, in politics, where is the moment you will think, okay, let's show, or let's start, and we will see what is next?
When is the moment like this?
Yeah.
I think it's always the moment, because what I can see is that many business people, but also politicians, are avoiding to make decisions. Right? You said, of course, this is a decision, but if you don't take a risk, at the end of the day, you're gonna pay high price if you don't make decisions, right? Because expectations from people is that you are a politician to make changes for the positive, right? And so in politics, you make decision every time. If you avoid it, you are just out, right? Mm-hmm. But it's important, what you were saying, it's important to understand the risk, to understand what kind of decisions are. And I fully agree with Professor Balcerowicz, it's important to find the critical aspects of it, right? So you make decisions every time, and you have to understand. So you have to analyze a lot and make decisions and move on, always move on.
Mm-hmm. Grażyna, you said some quote, it was about the second chance. Is it easy for you to giving people second chances?
Actually, Professor gave us a really great hint about this critical versus not that important things. It really depends. If I asked Pete if he was willing to to give a second chance to grant crew that actually did not do the job and somebody got killed because of negligence, I would say that if this failure is critical and somebody did something that was easy for him, not communicated, was not looking for help, or did it on purpose, also happens, there are some vicious people in all the organizations, then I would be very skeptical about giving the second chance, but there are lots of different situations that can also be, actually we can be responsible for giving a task, giving a job or kind of strategy to somebody that was not fit for that. So, well, paying for our mistake or the, I would say, circumstances, we had war, we had COVID. If you can blame somebody clearly for the actually for what has happened, for a big failure, then, well, the second chance is difficult. But, well, we are still, all of us, we are people, we are human beings, we make mistakes. If if the mistake is not little, if it's not really a kind of crucial, then, well, it's the executive decision then to make the judgment call on that one. But I really believe in second chance. I try to look for positives in looking for an answer. It means there is a failure, you did it, tell me why you did it. And then based on the information, the brain processes the information, and then there is the exact decision at the end.
Yeah, as you said here and on the backstage that we had COVID. Now we have AI. Between we have a war. So now it's easier, I think, to think about ourselves. I'm a human. Yes, I'm a leader. I'm a politician, but I'm a human. But years ago, it wasn't as easy.
I agree. Now, this is what I mentioned. We live as managers or politicians in the world of constant change, really constant. You have to respond quickly, you have to react quickly.
Taking the risk very quickly.
And yeah, you see the risk very quickly also, because the risk is coming, or you can, well, you may not see it coming, but then you have to respond quickly. Otherwise, you are gone. So it's easier to be now more apologetic. So the second chance is easier to
So what
be
about
granted.
second chances in your business or maybe private life, Mr. Professor?
First, I think politicians should not be professionals for life. So there should be rotation. And I was not a typical politician because I was interested in the job. For the first time between 89, 91. And then acceleration of reforms between 97 and 2000. And I think it would be useful to introduce two terms, like it is the case as far as senators are concerned, so that politicians do not lose touch with reality and do not become purely professional politicians. That's first. And I think when I look at politics in a global perspective, it seems to me that radical reforms which are necessary because of the accumulated problems under the rule of professional politicians, that radical reforms are usually introduced by newcomers. Look at Argentina nowadays. The same was in Poland in 89. So, end of professional politicians for life.
So, thank you very much. It was closing debate on ABEL Summit, Fall, Stand Up, Move On, Prize of Success. Grażyna, Piotrowska-Oliwa, Paul Raddon, Professor Leszek Balcerowicz, Pete Phillips, Ryszard Petru, Jarosław Kuźniar. Thank you very much, guys.